What we've got here, this is a Ducati starter clutch. It's a bit broken, so I'll start from the beginning. So this bike, earlier this month I went out to have a look at this bike and it wasn't starting. Quickly realised that it was full of diesel, so I was only there for a little bit of time because obviously I'd quoted the guy a set price to diagnose the fault and then service it. So the service was done, and then I went about trying to figure out why it wouldn't start, and then it was quite obvious that it was full of diesel. So in that time I also managed to get the guy to go and get some fresh fuel, because having done this a few times, generally if you drain out the tank, get as much out of the tank as possible, and then fill it up with petrol, you can usually, not always obviously, usually you can get them started. In this case I got the tank completely drained. I had a vacuum line for my brake bleeder hooked up to it. It was sucking out everywhere I could see inside the hole. I thought I'd got most of the fuel out. I mean, you couldn't hear anything when you shook the bike. Filled it up with petrol, tried to start it. It wasn't having any signs of life, and because the time was running out, I was really and the guy wasn't there either, so he couldn't help me. I couldn't ask him, can I try this, can I try that? So I thought the best thing I can try and do is to get it going with a bit of easy start or something like that. Unfortunately on these bikes, the Airbox intake, I don't even know where it is at the moment, but I believe it's underneath the fuel tank around about here, which we'll see in a minute. So tried some easy start, basically squirting it down here, and it did fire up once or twice, and I thought we've got to keep persistent with this, because eventually the petrol's going to get through. Because what my theory was, this diesel has probably gotten through to the fuel pump, it's gone down the fuel line to the injectors, and it's basically like a brick wall. It won't fire through the injectors, or it won't ignite anywhere in the cylinder. So yeah, it started on easy start a couple of times, but it literally ran for about 2 seconds, cut out. So I just persisted with that, cranking it, trying easy start, cranking it, and on these bikes they only let you crank for 25 seconds or something like that. It's not very long. Obviously this was hooked up to another battery, so I wasn't damaging the battery. I was a bit concerned about the starter motor, so I wasn't pushing it too much, just letting it cool down for a few minutes at a time, and then the last time that it did fire up, I managed to get the engine to run for probably about 5 to 10 seconds, and it was chucking out loads of smoke, and I thought, here we go. And then there was a massive backfire, and then the engine cut out, and then it sort of sounded like something was going the opposite way. So it was like the engine had backfired and gone the opposite way, and there, at that point, the starter clutch exploded. So after a couple of weeks, the guys got me the bike back. So I've got the starter clutch out. We found out that, I found out that the starter clutch is indeed the weak spot, which is fair enough, not the end of the world. We can replace that. The next thing will be get this tank off and find out if everything else is alright, because we've got the fuel pump to check. We've got to check that these lines aren't in fact full of diesel, and then get the injectors out and test out everything, make sure that everything else is okay. So I've done a few bikes. I'm just trying to think now. Mostly fuel injected bikes. They've all managed to start. I mean, I'm talking like a Honda scooter, Kawasaki Twin, and there was an R6 as well. So the carb bike was probably the most straightforward of all, because you can get to the carbs, you can get the fuel out, drain the carbs, flush it out, you know, quite straightforward. So knowing all that, I said to the guy, don't worry, it'll be fine, we'll get it started. And here we are, we've exploded something. So I'm going to get the tank off, and then let's find out if there's any problems. Well, actually, before I get the tank off, what I want to do is I want to just test this. Now then, I have got a fuel tester somewhere, but I don't think I've got an adapter. But I might just release this fuel line, make sure we've got pressure there, and see what sort of, if it's any petrol or anything like that. And I'm not, I mean, it won't do anything because there's no starter gear. The starter motor will spin, but that's it. But we can get the fuel pump going just by turning the ignition on, I believe. So it's keyless. I'll just do this while. So I don't know if that was the, because we're not in neutral, it won't fire. So we'll have to get into neutral first. Right, so there's going to be all sorts of warning lights because I think I've got the crank position sensor unhooked. Everything else is unhooked, you know, fuel pressure gauge, everything. So there's going to be a lot of warning lights on it. So that's the fuel. That's the starter. So I'm just going to see if we can hear this fuel pump going. Yeah, I can feel that. It's actually pumping. So I'm going to unhook this hose and just see if we can get some pressure out of it. Oh, the fuel pump's working. Yeah, that's just diesel, that fuel. So, wowzers. Normally they don't do that. So when you take these off, I think they normally seal up. So that's a bit of a worry. If you turn the ignition on, of course, all that just pours out. So let me clean up this mess. Right, let's try that again. So kill switch on. Let's see what happens. Okay, turn it off. Let's just reconnect that. I'm having some difficulty with it, so just turning it on and off is a bit more. Can't get the fuel pump to activate just by turning the key on and off, so I'm going to have to plug in, see if I can get the pump going. It's not working. Even turning it off, it won't obey. Right. I think I'll pull the tank off anyway. That's your fuel tank off, and then they have these little hats on the Airbox. So I'm just going to try and, I think I'll try and get to, I've got to get to the injectors really. So the fuel line here, it feeds down under there. I've just got to get to that, I think, because if this is full of diesel, it smells a bit petrol-y though, but I think it's just best. What should I do? I feel like I can pull. I'm sure this should drain out if I just put it down. Everything's connected to the fuel line for some reason. Got like wiring and everything. So if I cut that off, where's the cutter? So I cut this, get all these out of the way. I should be able to just turn that upside down and drain off as much as possible. Not much coming out, is there? Oh, there we go, I've got a bit of a trickle. Yeah, so I'm hoping that will draw out the bulk of that diesel. It's not the highest point, but maybe I can draw it out with a bit of the old-fashioned suction. Because obviously I've got to take quite a bit off just to get to the injectors. Another thing I want to know is where's the intake for these things, because I don't think I found it yet. Anyway, this is what was in here before. It's hard to tell what that was. Yeah, the hard choice. Do I take all this off and drain out all the diesel? In fact, there's the line there, goes into the airbox, so it might not be that bad. Of course, the injectors are going to be, unless it's like the old ones where the injectors are in the intake, like the throttle body. I really can't remember what these are like. Let's take the airbox off. Yeah, so the airbox lid, the opening, is basically right underneath the ignition barrel. So there's like a little duct. I don't know if that's a duct really, but there the air comes in. So from the front, it's about where the coolant bottle is, so you can see that air filter through that gap. So for guys who want to use Easy Start, that's where you want to direct the spray in there. So let's get this air filter out. Not the cleanest of filters. Oh, come on. Oh, God, the dust just fell out of it. Oh my God. Oh, that's gone down there. I think I'll have to take the airbox off now. Clean out all the grit. Look at that. Figure out how the rest of this comes apart. That's a screw under there, isn't it? Oh, that's good. No, it's on top on that side. What the hell? So they put a screw there and a screw there. Where else is it connected? Can't just be two screws. Yeah, there's another one back there, I can see. So that's going to be difficult to get this airbox apart, but maybe they've got a way of doing it. Take the clamps off, get to that clamp. The front one might be behind this coil. Anyway, let's see if we can see anything in there. I can't see a great deal, but let's see the rear throttle body. Yeah, there's screws everywhere to get this airbox has got to come out in one piece, but there's wires going into it as normal. Everything's inside the airbox. I'll have a crack at it. I'll see if I can get this airbox off without too much work. Yeah, so there's that much work involved in this. You can get to the rear inlet inlet boot, no problem. The front one is around about this section, so straight down, it's in there basically. But when you look at the airbox and there's obviously the wiring, there's sensors, there's pipes, it's mounted, I think. There's a lot going on basically, so I think I'm going to vacuum out the airbox, get all that debris out, and then the injector side of it, I'm just going to have to try and suck out as much fuel as possible. The way it's designed, it could be very hard to get to the injectors. Can't really see in there. But the injectors are going to be in the airbox, I think. In fact, I can see the injector there. So through this you can see that there's the throttle body there, and the injector's actually directly underneath that throttle plate. So what you can do in some cases is you can you take the sort of ignition away, so you don't unplug the coils, and then you give it full throttle. Because this is fly-by-wire, it's going to be tricky because the bike won't want you to open the throttle that much, but you'd open the throttle and then crank the bike and see the injector. I think in this case, if I clear that fuel out as much as possible, it's basically like a hose pipe, you're trying to drain out as much of the old water. So if I do that, drain out as much water or diesel as possible, you know, I could also put in some petrol and then let that drain out. Because of where it goes into the box, basically this line, the fuel line, goes into the side of the box here. So the injectors are going to be around about the middle of this box. The front one might be a bit lower, but hopefully I can just wash out the fuel from this side of it. And then a good thought would be just dump out all that fuel that's in the tank. It is a big tank after all. Dump out all that fuel and then put in a full tank or a few litres of good fuel to make sure. And then final thought would be just to verify we've got good pressure. I mean, it did pump out quite a lot of fluid earlier, so I think the fuel pump should be okay, but you just don't know sometimes. So yeah, I think I'm going to have to get rid of all this fuel perhaps, because we did fill up about 10 litres I believe, and it doesn't smell very good. It just smells like oil in there, so there's a good chance that that fuel is still contaminated.